Welcome to Meet the Thought Leader with Katrina Rogers Consulting. Hi there, and welcome to Meet the Thought Leader with On Thinking Cat. I'm your host, Katrina Rogers, and today we are meeting leader, innovator, and pharma disruptor Paul Young, the CEO of Nutmeg Pharma, a company builder passionate about creating amazing organizations that bring innovative breakthrough treatments to patients. Paul aims to build a pharma company that everyone can love by breaking the rules and engaging with the world. But first, here's a quick message from our sponsor. That's me. I work daily to bring you great insights and to help diverse life science entrepreneurs break through obstacles to get their medical products from bench to bedside. Please help me to help you by subscribing and sharing the Thinking Cat newsletter. Thank you for joining us today, Paul.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on with you today.
Awesome. Well, let's get started by having you tell us about your background.
Sure. So I've been in biopharma for over 30 years. I come from the science side, from biology in particular, and I've had the privilege of finding myself in a number of different roles at a variety of different companies, ranging from startups with as few as one or two people through to global pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer and Sanofi. I lived a lot of that time in research and development, focusing usually on the earlier stages of programs, from even target ideation, what's the type of target we're going to go after, all the way through into early development. I've kind of had a career in broadly two parts. So a lot of that was building pipeline from the inside. So leading R&D groups to actually find new small molecules, new biologics, but also for almost the same amount of time, building pipeline from the outside. So I've been in business development roles, particularly at large pharmaceutical companies, where I've always thought of it as sampling the world's lab bench to find the most promising cures for patients. Perfect.
Excellent. Well, that's great. And it sounds like you've got exactly the background that you need in order to embark on this work. So tell us what prompted you to start Nutmeg Pharma and why did you choose that name?
Sure. So nutmeg, the name, actually comes from a place where people wouldn't typically think of. Of course, everybody thinks of the spice, and spices kind of related in some ways to herbs and things like that that might have medicinal properties. But in this case, nutmeg actually comes from a soccer term. And in soccer, a nutmeg is a move where a player that has the soccer ball and is moving downfield towards the goal encounters a defender, and they're actually able to kick the ball in between the defender's legs and continue moving the ball downfield. And I really like that concept because what we're doing at Nutmeg is really trying to break some of the rules of typical pharma and biotech drug discovery. And so we're kind of kicking the ball, I guess, through the legs of the typical process of how you try and develop a drug. And I have a number of ideas that kind of formed the background for what Nutmeg is, and I'd be happy to share those in a graphic.
Excellent. Because I was going to say, building a pharma company that everyone can love, that's a tall order. So why don't you pull up your slide deck and tell us a little bit about the problem that you're looking to share, and then you can tell us how the company will work.
Perfect. So I personally had a number of goals in mind that ultimately led to the creation of Nutmeg, and they are a little bit diverse. So, first off, I wanted to have a company that was going to build a pipeline, truly transformational cures for patients. So, question that at its heart, Nutmeg is a therapeutics company. But from my experience in the industry, I've seen a number of aspects that I wanted to address in the form of a new company and what ultimately is a new model. So I really wanted to find a company, or build a company, I should say, that could actually get anyone and everyone involved in finding cures and being able to contribute to helping patients. I think what I've seen is typically you think of scientists as being at a biopharma company and ending of disease mechanisms and the chemistry if you're going to go down the path of a small molecule. But people in the world who don't have science backgrounds, but who would love to be able to be involved in somehow finding a cure for a patient, and often a personal connection there. They may have a family member, they may have a family history in a particular disease. And I also love the idea about the diversity of thought that you can get around the table if you include people who aren't just scientists or might have a scientific kind of frame of mind when approaching a problem. One of the things I also wanted to do was find a way that one could actually fund challenging projects. I mentioned I wanted to build a pipeline of transformational cures, and my belief is in order to do that, you often have to go to the fringes of current therapy. You have to be able to embrace novel ideas or concepts in terms of disease mechanisms to really break out of the mold of sort of Me Too approaches or convention thinking around the biology of a disease. But the challenge, unfortunately, is the further afield you go, it can often be that much more difficult to actually get funding for those projects or for those companies. So really finding a way to really be able to go after high risk, high reward opportunities and be able to pay for them. So in addition, one of the other aspects from my career in the biopharma ecosystem, I've always just been really frustrated with the poor reputation or the poor relationship, unfortunately, that it seems that pharma has with the general public. In one of the most recent surveys, I had seen that big pharma was viewed as the most negative business sector out of everything. And for somebody that works in the area, has been exposed to so many different people working in biopharma who really have the best intentions in terms of helping patients, that's just really frustrating. And unfortunately, I often see that pharma just continues to shoot themselves in the foot in terms of really trying to improve that reputation. And so I knew that in a new company, I really wanted to be able to somehow tackle that head on. And as we may talk about in a little more detail, some specific things there that brings up, like how do you have full radical transparency as a company in terms of the work that's taking place, publishing all data, positive, negative, ambiguous in real time, really engaging with the public in terms of sharing real-time updates and what goes behind decision making. And also along the way, having that be a portal for educating people about how do you really get a drug discovered, advanced, and ultimately being delivered to patients who need it. No question that currently we're living in a unique time with artificial intelligence, with AI, and the emergence of additional peripheral technology like quantum computing. And I think for people who live in the biopharma sector, they actively engage in thinking about, okay, well, how are we going to utilize AI in a biopharma drug discovery and development context? And that's great. And definitely going to be applications for that, as one can see with the emergence even of some new companies. But I believe that the impact of AI across all sectors outside of biopharma is going to be at least as impressive and revolutionary. And so why not find a way to build a company that can also really position itself to take advantage of how you might apply AI in all different areas? Because without saying, put the patient and not profits at the heart of decision making. So really being able to always be driving your decision course that you take around what's the impact going to be. And this touches on a number of the different things we've already covered, like finding the best cures or the most revolutionary ones. And this isn't to say that in current biopharma companies that the goal to do this, to really address the patient's need, the goal is there. I think the challenge has often been still with the current funding models that you run into a little bit of a conflict when it comes to fiduciary responsibility as a public or even as a private corporation to your investors. And so, kind of hidden in this goal of putting the patient, not profits, at the heart of decision making is embedded a concept of, okay, well, if you're going to really do this in a way that hasn't been done before, you're going to have to find, again, a different way to be able to fund your research. There's a goal that goes along here in terms of being able to support and empower entrepreneurs, either it be in biopharma or otherwise. I've always really had a soft spot for people who are trying to launch companies. I think another really unique thing in our time and moving forward is that there are so many more people these days that want to be entrepreneurs, especially when you look at the younger generations, whether it's Gen Z or Gen Alpha and beyond, really being able to develop one's side gig or side hustle or really break free from what's been usually perceived over the years as the traditional path to a career. It is alive today more than ever. And so it makes sense, I think, as one's forming a company today to really find a way to tap into that and support it. And lastly, I'd love if one's putting all these pieces together and coming up with a new model for how a biotech or a biopharma might work. Gee, it'd be great if it was successful, that it could be a model that could really revolutionize the whole ecosystem. So all these different ingredients, I guess, were added to the pot of trying to come up with what Nutmeg is all about.
Perfect. Well, that's a good description, I think, of the problem statement. Why don't you show us your slide that explains how the solution is going to work?
Sure. So in this simple diagram, Nutmeg is diagrammed as a company that's kind of in two parts. So as I mentioned, no question that Nutmeg at its heart is a therapeutics company. And there are many aspects to Nutmeg that are very focused in terms of how we operate about a pipeline. And we call that effort within the company the Cure Collective. And so the same way that a company, whether they be Eli Lilly or whether they be the smallest of startup, they have a goal to build a pipeline that has different therapeutic that'll likely be at different stages, progression. And that's what we'll be doing within Nutmeg as well. Initially, our approach will be to license these programs through business development, and we will be looking anywhere and everywhere for what the most promising science is telling us in terms of potential therapeutics. So we'll be very opportunistic, we'll be modality agnostic as well as disease area agnostic. We'll be truly going after situations or examples where the scientific hypothesis or the data is very compelling. There may still be a lot of risk associated with the program because it might be quite early, but we're willing to take on that risk and to pursue those programs. The second part of the company, which is kind of really where we diverge from your typical biotech, is we have this whole other effort that's called the power plant. And it's called the power plant because this is where we're actually generating the energy, or more specifically, the funding and money to actually pursue our research and development. And so, as you may remember from all the different ingredients that were going into the concept of Nutmeg, a lot of those dealt with looking at areas outside of science, getting everyone involved in the ability to find cure, entrepreneurship, all those types of things. And that's what's cooking in the power plant. And while some might think of this as being reminiscent to the older pharma models where you might have had a consumer products division, whether it was, selling Band-Aids or OTC drugs, what we're doing in the power plant is we're really kicking that up 11 in terms of we're throwing the doors open to any type of business outside of pharma where a path to potential revenue and success is quick, and it leverages a lot of the new emerging trends and trends that still haven't even been thought of yet to come over the next few years. And so, for example, one could see within the power plant an expert at dog obedience training who wants to launch a social media career as an influencer, generating subscription revenue or advertise. That in itself could actually be a business line, essentially, that we support and incubate within Nutmeg in the power plant. This could be the development of application or even SaaS that, especially these days, you could think of as really being accelerated through the application of AI, where, one can even kickstart the development of a potential application without any true knowledge of coding, the application of AI. Gamers who are streaming on Twitch, generating subscription revenue, entrepreneurs who have a passion for food or fashion and want to actually be generating a new clothing line. Any of these could be businesses where these would actually be entrepreneurs that we would bring into Nutmeg as employees or EIRs, help support them in a whole variety of different ways to develop and launch their business, in many ways with the safety net of actually being an employee. And then for a period of time, pointing some portion of their revenue towards actually funding the pipeline within the Cure Collective. And so in many ways, one of the things we're trying to achieve here is really trying to balance out a lot of the negative that are associated with trying to actually develop a drug. So, anybody who's in the biopharma ecosystem knows that it's a very long timeline to ultimately getting an approval, especially if you're starting out at the very earliest points. There's high risk of failure, even once you're in the clinic, just 1 out of 10 of your programs succeeding, very expensive. And so here in the power plant, what we're trying to do is really tap into a lot of the different ways that one can start a business for not a lot of money, try and really very quickly figure out if it's going to be success, And even if the amounts of revenue for any one of those individual business lines is relatively small, especially where we're going to be focused on a lot of early stage programs within the Cure Collective, even small packets of revenue can actually go a long ways towards answering some key go, no go questions. So, if one's working even through a CRO on a particular pipeline program, if you can run a cell line panel in an in vitro study to ask for the effect of a potential drug, if one's going to run an in vivo study. A lot of these can be done with the types of revenue that we could see actually being generated by some of the business lines actually quite early in the power plant.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing those slides and kind of demystify the process. So I want to ask you next, now that you shared what the problem is and what how NetWig is poised to work on it. What are your biggest obstacles right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think right now, one of the challenges that we're really grappling with is how do you start best? In many ways, it's like we are building at a minimum two companies at the same time, to the extent that one thinks even of the different business lines that we're trying to create within a power plant. You can almost think of any one of those as its own individual company. And so right now, we're actually trying to tackle those in parallel. We have a lot of efforts ongoing already to go out and identify potential pipeline programs to bring in for the Cure Collective, and we're making very nice progress there. And at the same time, we're actually going out and really tapping into the entrepreneurs, the creators. Everyone thinks of the creator economy in terms of all of the different people out there at all different ages who are trying to sort of develop their own gigs. It can be a little bit challenging in terms of focus, but for me, I love it. I love the fact that I can be on one phone call that's a very deep science dive with the head of an academic lab at a world's leading university, and then hang up that call and then get on the phone with a 25-year-old that's trying to sort of launch a new clothing brand. And they're really looking for a partner in doing that to help them with a lot of the practical aspects about how do you form a company and trying to get them connected with good mentors in the whole startup and entrepreneurship world. So it's a challenge, but it's one that's also quite fun. The other approach that we're also taking to really see if we can use it as a way to really get us started on the power plant side is, I talked a lot about entrepreneurship and helping people get their businesses started and all the different ways that could look, even in terms of social media. But the really nice thing, powerful thing that we've found with this model is that once we've thrown the doors open as a drug discovery and development company to people everywhere, regardless of sort of what their background is, regardless of what their business is, it's opening up a lot of new avenues for us in terms of partnering with established companies. So something very fitting with our model is to reach out to any company you might think of. So one could think of reaching out to Sephora as a worldwide cosmetics brand and talking to them about the fact that some of their key customers, of course, are women, and that some of the programs that we have in our pipeline are focused on women's health. It's a very direct line so this allows a company like Sephora to go out and talk about the fact that not only are they developing a product for women in the context of a cosmetic, but they're also directly contributing to the development of a product when it comes to a therapy or a cure for women's health. This is something that, at least that I'm aware of, has not been possible before. I think when you live in sort of the biopharma world, and you aren't really having this perspective where you're really open to kind of building a bigger tent for everybody, it's really been a limitation. And so here we're really trying to find all the various different ways so we can tap into the breadth of our exposure.
That's just exciting. It's such a visionary model. I really appreciated hearing it the first time. I appreciate your even clearer explanation for me the second time around during this interview.
Yeah.
Paul, so, I'm guessing you probably need some help. How can people reach you so that they can help you?
Yeah, I definitely encourage anybody who is interested, who this resonates with, to reach out, whether it be through my LinkedIn profile, whether it be through my email. I'm always very happy to speak to people kind of on both sides of what we're doing at Nutmeg. So whether it be on the pharma side, if you're interested in talking to us about a program that you may have ongoing, whether it be at your own company or whether you're an academic researcher, or if you're more on the power plant side in terms of you're really looking to kind of start something that has nothing to do with science. But the idea of being able to do that and really have an association with a direct impact on society and on patients, by all means, reach out.
Awesome. Well, viewers, we will have Paul's contact information available in the accompanying text with this video, so you'll be able to reach right out to him. Paul, thank you very much for sharing your expertise and your vision today. Want to let everyone know that Paul will be joining me on Thinking Cat Chat 1 week from Friday. Don't miss your chance to ask him all the questions that you have and contribute your support to Nutmeg Pharma. Thanks again, everyone. And we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Katrina. Bye.
You're welcome. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tips on navigating the life science industry.